Christy, firstly, I say this to every single one of the guests that I speak to, incredibly grateful for your time and knowledge you're about to deliver to whoever listens to this. So thank you very, very much. And everybody watching, thank you for taking the time to join us. Christy, I don't get to make about who people are because I'll butcher your experience compared to who you are. So give us the intro. Who are you and what are you here to talk to us today about?
Well, my name is Christy Walsh, and I am a go-to-market enablement specialist slash advisor. I have been in enablement for nearly 2 decades, which, yikes. And for the most part in sales enablement or mostly with the go-to-market team. So for at least 15 years. I have been delivering presentation skills, mostly in person, but also obviously virtually, for almost that entire time. And I originally wanted to get into that and build a program for presentational skills and presentational confidence because, well, the first presentation I ever did was nerve-wracking and horrifying and just I couldn't tell you what I said because I don't remember it. I like to call that presentational amnesia. I think a lot of people get
Yeah.
that. But also, I saw my colleagues just limiting their careers and limiting themselves because they were shying away from roles or just meetings where they knew they were going to have to present. And it absolutely would crush my soul to watch somebody shrink themselves because they didn't think they could do something.
Now, maybe for a different call, but the reason I'm intrigued, and I'm just going to double click on what you just said at the end there about crushing their soul towards the end of it, right?
Mhm.
The reason I'm bringing this point into light is, do you deliver the training that you wish you had to help people overcome that, or do you? The reason I'm asking it is because often we give the love to the world that we wish we received,
Mm.
and I'm wondering if that sentence right there of what you just said about of I want to help people overcome that, is that because you were given that training and you saw the benefit of it, or because you were never given it and you wonder how soon or how much sooner would you have flourished if you had had it?
So, I don't know that I was ever given it. I do know that somebody said the words to me at some point, and it was probably back in high school, which was "fake it till you make it." Nobody will know. Nobody will
Mm,
know the inexperience you have, so just do it. And
yeah.
I took that along with me. Um, but then professionally, I don't think people were availing themselves of training that might have been made available or even asking for it. That's the level of fear people are at, I think, once they get to a professional level where people see asking for help as weakness. And so they don't ask for it and then they never get it. And I hadn't gotten it professionally either until I got to a certain level. Um, and that was only because it was for large rooms. And we had spoken about, right, virtual presenting, in-room presenting, and then large room presenting. That was a specific skill
Two
that was
completely
given.
different skills.
Yeah. hmm
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's double click on that then. Let's dive into that, and we're going to break the rest of this talk up by two main areas. And that first area is going to be presenting skills. Like, how do I master virtual? And let's just keep it high level for now. We're not trying to like reinvent the way people do things, but let's just keep it the bullet points, the high level, because where I really want to focus on is what we do is holding big rooms, and we both just stepped out of a revenue kickoff where we were commanding rooms of sometimes 100 people in a room, right? So let's start the conversation off with like
Mhm.
virtual, what do I do? And let's break it down by three parts. How do I prep? How do I run? And what do I do after? So
Okay.
virtual, what do I do to prep?
So virtual prep is exactly what I did for this particular call that we're doing right now, right? I did my
Yeah,
hair and it's making me crazy, but you'll notice that I'm moving my hair around. That's going to
it
draw
looks
your
good, by the
eye.
way.
Thank you. But
Yeah,
I've got natural movements that you would normally see in a regular meeting room, but you've got to keep people's eye on you. So
yeah,
keeping the screen moving intentionally, not crazy, right? but with
Yeah.
intentional movements like moving your hair, it engages people's eyeballs and keeps them from wandering off the screen, which is your biggest competitor at this point, especially in a
Yeah.
virtual environment. Okay.
Which is
Anywhere
funny
else.
because my phone is right here. And even though I have
Exactly.
notifications turned off, I'm waiting for a call, right? And
Right.
I'm about to turn it upside down because I don't want to hear that. I don't want to see that come in.
Yeah.
I want to be here. So, and
Yeah.
that I'm on this call, I hosted this, and even that's distracting me. So,
And you've
wicked
still got a
point.
distraction. Yeah, removing distractions is
Yeah.
absolutely key, especially for yourself. But you can also mention that as you begin to give a quick reminder to people to maybe remove their distractions as much as they can. We know we're in a post-COVID world. We know that the household is generally happening around people working from home, and you're never going to stop that. But turning your phone over, removing any of the distractions around your screen. I've got 5 screens, right? Turn them off as much as you can because you want your audience to know that you're focused on them because you want them to be focused on you. Don't limit your natural
Yeah.
movements. Do that. But then I think even before any of that, know your tools. So we're not using Zoom today. We're using Microsoft Teams. Do I know how to present in Microsoft Teams? Did I watch a YouTube video to help me? Many of them are very similar. Many of the tools, Zoom, Teams, whatever else, however many other you have. But just make sure
Hmm.
you have a passing familiarity with the actual tool.
I understand. So we've discussed distractions, we've discussed tooling, and what about the actual content itself?
Mhm.
Because you brought something to my attention, which I actually thought was the opposite, and that is that when you're preparing content, I always thought that black background, white writing accentuated on a big screen and looked better, whereas you tell me it's the opposite. So let's talk about what do I do with prep when it comes to content?
Yeah, so the human brain is going to take in information in a specific way. And if you're using a black background, that takes up a lot of space in the human brain. And so generally speaking, you want to have a white background and you want to have dark lettering. You don't want to have a light background with light lettering. Some people think like, oh, I'll use yellow to highlight in writing. You're not going to see that, right? So make
No.
sure that you can see your own screen and that it's as easy for your audience to take in as possible. Um, I like to use as little I like to have as few words on the screen as possible. People
Hmm.
read at a certain rate and they hear at a certain rate. They read faster, but then they get ahead of you. So you just want the things on your screen to be supplemental to what you're saying. You do want people to hear you and listen to you. If they read your slide and realize you're reading a slide, they'll get ahead of you and then go check an email. So you just
Oh
want the
yeah.
slide to be supplemental.
So it's almost like these are the bullet points of what we're going to be covering, A, B, C, and but you're building on that. So you the expert, you the presenter, the one that's almost like this is the reference of what I'm using to speak about, but this is
Mhm.
actually what you need to know, the meat and the nitty gritty behind it. And on that point, then what's the preference over words versus pictures, right? And I understand the difference between kinesthetic and auditory learners and visual learners and all of this kind of stuff, but what is it? What is the difference? What is the thinking around pictures versus words and bullet points and all of this good stuff?
I do love a good picture. The brain loves to take information in through pictures. It helps the brain to concrete an idea.
Yeah.
Um, but you're not going to find a picture that adequately conveys the same message to all brains every time. So you want to be
Hmm.
judicious in what kind of picture you're using. Um, that image of the circle with the line through it for when you don't want someone to do something, like, that's fairly everyone basically takes that picture in generally the same way. So that's a
Mm.
really good thing to use if you're saying, "Oh, don't do this." Um, but not all images convey something as succinctly and universally. So you want to be judicious with your pictures. They are good. If you find a great one, definitely use it. But you are probably going to need a mix of both.
And let's now talk about, so say I'm the individual on the other end of this meeting and I'm listening and I'm thinking, well, I've got a presentation coming up. What do I need to be aware of in myself? because I understand the benefits of dramatic pauses. I understand the benefits of once you've dropped a salient point, counting to up to 15. 3 to 15 is that kind of bandwidth of 3 seconds is the minimum. 15 seconds is before I start asking what questions has that left you with and all of this stuff. But help me with what do I do during a presentation to make the content pop and stand out and engage an audience?
Right. So generally speaking, when you are in front of the room, you don't have your entire body to use as the visual imaging or the accentuating that you would do when you're physically there. And you do need to keep people's eyes on the screen. So not only is your slide most of the screen, even if you are making motions like this, like I'm doing right now, you're a tiny little picture. So you do need your slide to convey it. And in a virtual environment, they say to keep people's eyes on the screen at an adequate rate, you really need to make 10 to 20 like movements per minute, which seems crazy. But it does keep people's eyes from wandering away. So if you do have bullets on a screen, what you do need to realize about your content is that you need to animate it, right? So learn animations in Keynote or PowerPoint or whatever it is you're using, or use the whiteboard function so that you're adding interest to the screen to keep people's eyes where they need to be so that they're getting the information that they need, they know they want, but if the screen isn't visually interesting, i.e. changing or adding, you're not going to keep the attention of the average viewer.
I hear you. And although I don't always agree with the practice of NLP, neuro linguistic programming, do you know much about it?
Yes.
So in NLP, it states that only 7% of communication, or something like that, 7% of communication is our verbs. So like not our verbs, the verbal side of things.
Yeah.
93% is made up of body language and tonality. Does that also factor into the presenting online? So is that the importance of camera? Is that the importance of the way I say things still?
Yeah, so you want to eliminate as many distractions as possible, like we said earlier. So if your lighting is really poor, people are going
Yeah.
to be very interested in why your lighting is really poor. And you're going to lose a portion of your audience who are just going to be wondering, like, why doesn't she turn a light on? And what's going on? Is she being interrogated?
Yeah.
So which is part of the reason why you do need to master your environment. You're removing your distractions. You are making it as least distracting as you possibly can for your audience. Be well lit, and make sure that that whole neuro-linguistic programming is working for you. Do a sound check. Make sure people can hear you. Make sure your connection is good. Ask people to tell you if the connection is good. A very good way to spike up people's attention is to say their name. So if you've got a list of your participants who are online, call someone out, say their name. Alex, can you please tell me if you can hear me? And using people's names will spike attention too. Even if it's not everyone's name, they'll think, oh my gosh, he might call on me. And now you've got attention back. So there are several things you can do to make NLP work for you without really sticking to it 1,000%.
I hear you. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because then it's almost that anxiety of like, oh, what if they call on me and I don't know the answer? And then that whole fear of like seeming like an idiot or incompetent. And you even talked about it earlier on, like of not knowing an answer to something and that feeling of inferiority, right? It really gets you quite hard, which is where the herd mentality and all of this stuff comes in. Now, something I do want to talk about very quickly about, because this is both on stage and off stage, and it's going to be quite a nice transition into on stage stuff in a second. Talk to me about hero complex and how to deliver a message to someone, because we talked extensively about this on Tuesday last week. And the reason I'm asking this question is something I've just come off a coaching call about, is how a salesperson is not the hero in a journey. The customer needs to feel like the hero.
Yeah.
How does this play into presenting?
So the hero's journey, and I have the book right nearby. It's gone now, but it's probably packed. I totally recommend it. It's called The Hero with 1,000 Faces, and it's all about how great filmmakers go back to this particular book and reread it. George Lucas reread it before he, put the final touches on Star Wars, and it helped him guide his story. And if you look at every single really huge movie franchise in the world, you'll see the hero's journey in each one, which is the hero's living his life, living her life, everything's normal. Something changes. Enter the mentor. The hero accepts the challenge, saves the day. If we just use the regular Star Wars, the original Star Wars, Episode 4, Luke.
Personal favorite of yours, I'm sure.
Yeah. Luke Skywalker's living on the moisture farm on Tatooine. Everything's normal. Something changes. R2-D2 and C-3PO come into his life, and he sees the video of Princess Leia asking for help. Enter the mentor. Obi-Wan Kenobi comes in, gives him the confidence, gives him the skills to accept the challenge, save the day. He blows up the Death Star. Teenagers making shenanigans all over the universe. Anyway, but if you start looking at every other huge movie, you're going to realize that that's happening in all the movies. Harry Potter, Harry's living his life on Privet Drive. Something changes. He gets the letter to Hogwarts, right? Enter the mentor, Dumbledore, accepts the challenge and saves the day. Now, that happens in every movie, but it also happens across all the movies throughout the franchise. And you're going to start seeing it everywhere, because there's small parts of that, like small parts of the story, the movie, within the movie. The hero's journey is also happening. So it's just something that particular structure, the human brain loves it. And what happened was the writer of the book, and why is his name escaping me? Anyway, it'll come to me at the most inconvenient time. He went around.
3 o'clock tomorrow morning, you'll wake up and you'll
yes, of course, yeah. He researched cultures all over the world, and what he found was that all of the stories that came up through the ages, through oral tradition, from as far back as no one even remembers, they all have that same structure. And he concluded that the human brain loves that structure. And it turns out he's right. We all go buy those movie tickets. So if you can take all of your stories that you're selling with, the story of how this particular customer implemented your solution, tool, product, whatever it is, and once they implemented it, they saved the day, right? They got a promotion, the revenue in the company went up by X amount, whatever that hero story is. But you've got to set yourself up as the mentor and not the hero. You're not the one who came into the company and gave them the software and you're the hero. No, the person who made the decision to buy and implement, that's the hero. And what that does in the potential customer that you're telling the story to, is allows them to imagine themselves as the hero. And who doesn't want to be the hero, right?
Well, it's really good. And I want to share this just to complement that, because some people might be thinking, okay, this is well and good. How do I include this in my presentation or in my sales stuff? So there's 2 questions I like to ask people, which is firstly, your target audience, what are their personal motives? Really crucial. It's a really simple question, right? But you're like, if I'm attending a webinar, if I'm attending a conference, the content, like, I'm going to go back once and I'm going to go forward 2. There's a great question, which is, what am I selling versus what is people buying, right? So I think I'm selling sales training. What I'm actually selling is you achieving your KPIs or whatever over here, right? I think I'm selling presenting, but I'm not. I'm actually teaching confidence. I'm teaching you to go and stand in front of your peers and deliver the pitch that you would deliver to pitch. So let's go fast forward. What is it the audience needs to hear, and what are their personal motives? What are they trying to gain? Is it a promotion? Is it win a new client? Whatever it is, what are their personal motives they're trying to get? The double click to that is, how do I make them look good to their board? And that question has helped me distinguish myself. I call it be memorable. My whole campaign in sales has become memorable, become the most memorable person in your client's decision process, right? How do I help you, Christy, look good to your board? Right.
Yep.
And if you can nail those two questions, what do you want out of this personally, career-wise or otherwise? And then what does your boss want to see to make you look good? And
Yep.
suddenly you've elevated yourself away from the competition, or you've elevated yourself away from the other presenters that just deliver content to this is now tailored to everybody in that room. And it's mega cool. Any final points? Any final questions? Any final statements from you on the presentation? Because we're now going to move on to the follow-up.
Yeah, no. So just in terms of presenting, and it doesn't really matter where you are, and it doesn't matter if you're virtual, if you are, if you're in a small conference room, if you're in a large room, no, it doesn't matter the media or the venue. Okay, what you always need to remember and take with you, if presenting is something that is absolutely anathema to you, is that no matter what, your audience is rooting for you. And here's why. People are terrified of presenting. Humans are terrified of presenting, of speaking in public. It is the number one human fear. They are more afraid of it than death. They are more afraid of it than getting sick. They are more afraid of it than spiders and sharks. Nothing is more terrified than speaking. So what you have to remember is that everybody who is listening to you is so happy it's not them speaking. They are so grateful to you for sort of, taking this role on and it not having to be them. So your audience is just built in so happy that it's you and not them, that you have to take that with you. And you have to remember, nobody audiences very rarely attack, okay? And so few are, you're safe and they're just happy it's you and not them. So take that confidence with you every time.
It's funny because you see the old films of when they're like bad performance, they get cabbage thrown and all of this stuff, and everyone's expecting that to happen. When I got on stage, I was like, they're going to think I'm too enthusiastic and I'm not going to find my vibe, and then these cauliflowers are going to come out of nowhere and just pummel me in the face, and it still hasn't happened. I go up every time, like, oh
yeah. Ever. There's just literally a sigh of relief that it's not them. So
yeah. And the biggest thing, this is an ego check. There's a wicked book called Ego is the Enemy, and it's how to remove, and I'm the worst for this. I'm the worst of having an attachment and expectation on a particular outcome. I'm terrible at this. So that's why I read the book. But Ego is the Enemy basically says you cannot win everyone, right? You just cannot do it. So whether it's a webinar, whether it's a live talk, and we'll go on to that in a second, you're going to lose a percentage. I don't want to say a number. I don't want to hold my name to a number. But what I am going to say is, even if you get one person, right, to show up and listen and implement, even if it's 1%, because 1% every day is still a lot more growth than 10% every now and again. But you do a little bit, you drop off, do a little bit, drop off. 1% is still enough.
Yeah.
And that to me is like the sign of a good thing. It's also, let's talk about the follow-up. And I like the fact that we've been blending both virtual and online. The reason I want to talk about follow-up is because in sales, I can't even remember the statistic, which is really, really bad. I'm just going to think about it. 85% of salespeople do not make a second follow-up. So what I mean by that is, if I do an initial discovery call and I say to you that I'm going to try and get back to you, or I'm going to follow up with information, 85% of people do not do that second follow-up. What does this mean, and why am I saying that? The amount of times that I've seen sales trainers, content deliverers deliver a piece of content and not realize that 90% of this content drops out of somebody's mind within 24 hours, right? There's no follow-up. So the reason I've talked about follow-up so much is you have to have a double click after. You have to have, run me through the follow-up. What do I do after an event to make sure something's been stuck, but also make sure someone's got a ton of value from it? And let's blend both virtual and in person, because it's the same kind of answer.
So the biggest thing about presenting or selling, right, is gaining trust. And if somebody asks you a question, and again, this is one of the reasons why people are afraid and terrified to present, is that you're afraid someone's going to ask a question and you're not going to know the answer. Guess what? Nobody knows everything. There's nothing you can do about that. The human brain will never know everything all the time for everyone. Okay. There are going to be questions that people ask that you don't know the answer to. Here's the hardest thing for people to do is to say, I don't know. Here's the second hardest thing. I will get that for you. And the third hardest thing, getting it for them, right? So if there are questions that come to you and you don't know the answer, or you possibly just don't have time for the answer, it might be a very long, involved answer. Commit to getting the answer, commit to following up, and then do it. Whether you're in a room full of 100 people, get that person's name, whether it's virtual, you can get the log of questions that were asked, commit to getting back to everyone. And you may get back to them and say, I need more time, but you get back to them. You do what you say you're going to do. You answer the questions that came to you, okay, as best that you can. But then the follow-up, when you do either a large room or a small group, the follow-up might be different. In a large room, you might have connected with all of those people on LinkedIn, and you might post, I was at XXSKO and presented this to this wonderful group of people. Thank you so much. Okay, that's part of follow-up. Now you're back in their brain. Now they're remembering what you said. Maybe it's a thank you email if it's a smaller group, or if you have access to the larger group, right? Maybe it's a thank you email. We talked about this. Thank you so much for your time. Some of you asked for this as a follow-up. Add that. Now you're back in their brain, but you cannot just walk away.
No, there's a really good, so we teach this to account managers and usually sales execs and above. There's a really good saying which is leave them wanting more, and it's not malicious. It's not used in a way of control or anything like that. If you're not 100% confident in the answer that you feel your prospect or your customer needs, there is nothing wrong with saying, you know what? And by the way, you also avoid things like, that's a great question. The reason for it is 9 times out of 10, they're not great questions. They're an average question. It's just a question. It doesn't have to be great or good. The problem with that's a great question is I can only use it once. And if someone feels it's actually a great question, the problem if you're doing it to a panel or you've got an audience in front of you, be that in person or otherwise or virtual, if I say, Christy, that's a great question, and then Bob asks a question I don't say, that's a great question. Is Bob's question less? Is Bob inferior? Is Christy better than Bob? What's going on here? So all of that stuff, I just avoid it. But leave them wanting more is purely about, you know what? That's a question I wasn't ready for. And before I just give you the answers, come to me. How about we sync up after this? And I find out the answer in the next 24, 48 hours. And even that's over promising because you might not have time and it might be a Friday.
Right.
Give me the week to really come up with this. Or it depends on what you're delivering, is you then follow up with, you know what, I wasn't prepared to answer that fully right now, but where does getting the answer to that question fall in your priority list?
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to sell something to someone and you suddenly realize that this is priority 2, and what would it mean to you to solve that though? What are you trying to really get out of this? You've just found an in for a sales conversation. And I'm always going to link it to sales, because if we're doing presenting on topics, there's usually an upsell or a sale off the back of something, right? It's just, that's what it's all about. Nothing's for free. So you can use that. Where does this fall in your priorities?
Yeah.
And what would it mean to you to solve that problem? Oh, it means we're going to try and unlock this much revenue growth, which will allow us to hire our next person, which means we can scale to the next level. Oh, okay. And then you're in, and then you do your sales cycle stuff, and you can follow up with blah, 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 blah. So, Christy, I love this because we've done a blend of both virtual and online.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, virtual and in person. And I love that. And we've covered the before, during, and after. What are the 3 must not do's when it comes to presenting, regardless of the platform? What are the 3 must not do's? Obviously, be late. But what are 3? What are 3 absolute must nots?
Do not try to be someone else. Own your presentational persona. Okay. If you see somebody present, if you're watching this right now and you're like, I love the way Alex presents, I'm going to present just like him, you are going to seem inauthentic, and worse, seem a little cartoonish because you're acting, right? Own your own presentational persona. No persona is bad. I know people, we were just in a room with a man, he has a very authoritative persona, which was perfect because we were in a room of 100 salespeople. And if you can't control that room, you are dead in the water, right? So
Yeah.
his authoritative persona works really good in that environment. But you know what? It would totally work online as well. If you have a professorial persona, that's fantastic. People are going to want to trust you. Make that work for you. If you are humorous, make that work for you, right? It's okay to use humor. We're fine. Everyone wants to laugh, especially because they're so happy they're not presenting, right? They want to laugh. A little nervous laughter never hurt. But
Very good.
own your
Yeah.
own presentational persona. Do not try to be somebody else. You are perfect and you are going to crush it.
This is more almost moving into therapy right now. By that confidence building right there, which is good because this is whole about performing confidence, right? Or performing confidence. So that's number one, is own the persona. What would number two be?
Um, I mean, it's really, really important to make sure that what you're presenting is what your audience needs. So doing that needs analysis beforehand, making sure, especially in a sales environment, that you're not just rolling out the same old for everyone, that you're getting to that personal motivation, you're doing your research before you put up 100 slides that don't really hit the mark and everyone feels like their time has been wasted. You have got to do that research before you decide what you're going to present.
Probably a good time to mention, no presentation should ever be 100 slides.
No, oh my goodness. Ugh.
Just to put a number on something really quick, if I deliver an hour of sales training, it's no more than 8 slides. Just FYI, because just on this point, we did. If do you know what the Pomodoro effect is?
Something happening in the back of my head. Remind me.
Pomodoro is, just imagine the egg timer, the tomato timer, 25 to
Yes.
45 minutes. So
Mhm.
your brain can literally, we're talking about brains and colors of black space earlier on. Our
Mhm.
brain can literally only focus for 35, 45 minutes, absolute
Right.
max.
Yes.
And then it's like a massive, like it's like a relatively downward decline. And then at 45
Mhm.
minutes ish, it just goes poof, and you
Right.
lose everyone. So
Okay.
the way around this is that it's theory and content for 15, 20 minutes, and
Mhm.
straight into exercise along with debrief and then
Right.
break.
Yeah.
And if you think about your story kind of idea, it's build the character. This is some
Mhm.
context. Talk about the thing. Talk about the resolution. Talk about the learning. Move on.
Yeah.
And that. So just wanted to quickly add that in. So first point is own the persona. Second point is
Mhm.
really know the content you're going to deliver, and does it actually land with my audience?
Right.
Point three. What is point three?
Well, the third thing is knowing that, and we spoke about this earlier, know about the arc of human attention span, right? And in the beginning of any presentation, you've probably got, and it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right? The beginning of the day, the beginning of your 10-minute presentation, the beginning of this answer that I'm giving you right now, right? The beginning of any presentation, you have roughly 80% of people's attention. If people are getting in for the day, where's my coffee? Oh no, he's speaking, right. Okay. Oh, I can't, my mic isn't on, whatever, right? You've got maybe 80% of people's attention. Midway through the meeting, your presentation, you've dropped to about 20%. And then at the end of the presentation, you say something like, well, we're going to wrap this up. Everybody spikes up. You've got 100% of their attention, and it's the last 30 seconds of your presentation, which is the only point that you've got 100% of people's attention. So let me ask you, if you have delivered the most important piece of information in your presentation at that midpoint where people have dipped to 20%, the human brain has decided, I've seen a presentation before, I didn't get killed, I don't have to be on high alert, right? So you've got 20%. roughly of someone's attention, and you just told them you could save them $2 million. That's not something that's going to come along. Make sure at the beginning of the presentation, you're telling them, I think, what if you could save $2 million? What if what I'm about to present you could save your company $2 million, whatever that is? Start with that.
I know I'm running a presentation with you. You've just got me excited by saying that.
Right.
I'm immediately thinking, well, actually, $2 million sounds like a realistic target this year.
Yeah. I don't know why I always use 2 million. I'm not sure why.
It's a good number. I mean, it's a comfortable number to make $2 million, right? It's come on, man. That's mega. That's mega.
So
anyway, sorry, I interrupted the flow.
Oh, that's okay. No, but you've got to start by telling people what's in it for them. But then again, you're still going to move to the middle point of that presentation. You've got to remind people's brains why they're supposed to be listening to you. And you can do neural spikes, and we'll go back to neural linguistic programming, but remind them why this is important for them to listen to. Make sure you're using a prop. I always have this very nearby my screen. Here's my human brain. It's only half.
Yeah.
But you want to get to this point, right?
It's the left-hand side?
Yeah.
It's the left-hand side?
Yeah.
That's the,
but using a prop like that
that's the process side of the brain.
Yeah, it's going to, oh, what does she have in her hand, right? That's sort of spiked up your brain. Now you're listening again. Now you're back at that roughly 80% or 100%. So make sure that you're spiking people back up to pay attention. And what that's going to do is make them remember you more. So always be aware of where people's attention span is generally sitting and have those neural spikes ready.
I love it. I love it. If we had an audience in front of you, that would have been a mic drop and there would have been a standing ovation right now. So Christy, I want to thank you. 44 minutes of incredible value delivered by you. Any final points, any final comments, any final bits from you?
No, I mean, only just to go back to why I literally built the first presentation skills program that I built. There's no other way around it than through it. So if you want to get better at presenting, present more, find opportunities to present more. Call me, set up a Zoom with me. I'm happy to do it. Present to me. Get practicing, because it's the only way to get better.
This is when you see after this, in the next year or so, like, Alex, I got 9,000 invites from that. Everyone's making $2 million a year now. Incredible. In that case, Christy, I'm going to love and leave you right there. Thank you a million times over. There needs to be, by the way, a second of this, which is where we actually talk about like how to put a presentation together, what neuro spikes are, and how do I filter those throughout the content. So watch this space. Christy Walsh, everyone, on talking about presenting skills and confidence. So I thank you, Christy, a million times over, and I'll see you on the next call.
Thanks for having me.
There you go. Very cool. Let's just stop.